So my name is Renee O'Neill, and I'm just going to take you through this architectural plan. This is a copy of the original architectural plans that were originally done on linen by noted architect John Calvin Stevens. And you'll notice it said New Biddeford City Building because the original city building, which was built in 1860, burned in 1895 on New Year's Day. And as a result, the main floor, which is what you see here, which is the ground floor, most of the structure was able to be salvaged. But what we'll see today in our walking tour is how much has changed in terms of the use of the space. But the footprint of the building has remained pretty much the same. It's just what we've done internally to adjust it to make it functional for the different ages of time periods that have used the facility. And also today you'll get to meet Paul Gagne, who spent a lot of time with the building, and he can go over a lot of the work that was done in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then we also have Brian Feeney with us today, who can give us a more current look at what the spaces are used for and what the future may hold for some of the areas.
My name is Tom Gerard. I'm a volunteer with the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center. Today is Friday, February 2nd, 2024, and we will be doing a tour of the City Hall. Joining me today are...
My name is Renee O'Neill, and I did a lot of work with the City Theater and its renovations, and it spilled over later into the City Hall, and have been involved with the works of repair work, restoration work. I would think it started probably in the late 90s. And today I also have Paul Gagne here with me, who we did a lot of work together, and he has a lot of history he's going to share.
Yes, again, my name is Paul Gagne. I spent 30 years in this building, so I would venture to guess I know every little nook and cranny that you can think of above and below the ceilings. I was heavily involved in restoration of the city clerk's office on all 3 floors. We did some renovations, set up a new computer system and so forth. I've been retired 22 years, but I still have a pretty good idea what goes on in this building. On my left is Brian Finney.
Yeah, I'm Brian Finney. I'm currently the city's Chief Operating Officer. I've been with the city since 2003, and I've been involved with most of the more recent renovations to City Hall.
So I'd like to start our tour today with what we're calling, in this moment in time, the City Clerk's Office. But back in the day, in 1895, with the drawings that John Calvin Stevens created, this whole area was used for a totally different purpose. And what's really interesting is that we are now almost close to architecturally peeling back the layers as to what was here originally, but for many years this space has been used for different purposes, as a bank, and now it's a place where people can easily enter the City Hall to do their business with the city clerk. So I'd like to start off with this area that we're standing in right now. We have everything from, I think, looking at the details here, I think we had, we actually had a reading room down here. We had a registration board. We had a bank. We had a treasurer's office. Then toward the back, where you're looking right now, behind those walls, there were actually jail cells. And further back was the police station. And what was interesting is that the entrances to the building were also different. And now some of them are closed off, and then we use what was that's now a window. And where you're looking right now was an entrance, but it didn't really come into the building exactly that same way, but that was one of the entrances to the building. Paul, tell us a little bit about your time here and what this space was used for. Right where we're standing right now, what was here?
When I came in here, this was still the York County Savings Bank. Eventually the bank either closed or moved on to, got bought up by another bank, and then they started wanting centralized collections and so forth and so on, because upstairs you had the city clerk's office, you had the collector's office here, and the money was scattered all over the place. So they wanted to streamline this operation, so we went upon and started remodeling this area here, running cables, because by that time we had a computer system running in the city hall, and they wanted to computerize all the transactions going on for control, so we started running wiring and so forth. Eventually we get everybody online down here, and you can see it was a tax collector's office, and registrations and everything is all streamlined in one area where all the money is controlled from one area.
And Brian, you have some things to share with us about the future, but right before that, there was a big transition that happened in this space. In, I think, May of 2005, I believe, there was a water tank that was on the second floor, I believe, or third floor, that leaked for 3 days. It was Memorial Weekend, and the water cascaded down through the floors, ruined the mayor's office, and all the way down to here. And the ceilings at the time, when you look up, this is the height of the original ceilings, but during the 70s, they had put drop ceilings almost everywhere in the building. And so that had all come apart and had crashed to the ground. So we had an opportunity to basically peel back the layers that I talked about earlier. And when we did that, we found a lot of really wonderful things that we wanted to bring back, which were the coffered ceilings, but they had to be recreated. And Mike Labby was a carpenter that worked with me on this project, and he recreated all the coffered ceilings. And the lights that you see here, those came from a library in Freeport. And we wanted to capture the feeling, and they were created at about the time of the time period that this was built. And it's also important to remember that this is not the original building. The original building was built in 1860, but where we're standing is the footprint. They ended up keeping most of what was here. And what was very important to note that fortunately, we're going to talk about the safes and the vaults, but there was a vault that held city records. And fortunately, the records did not get damaged in the fire. Most of the fire damage was water damage, but when the fire started, it took a long time for the fire department to be able to know where it was coming from. They found a trash can in a bathroom on the first floor, and they quickly extinguished it, but meanwhile, the flames had already started traveling between the walls and the floor, and by the time they recognized it, the fire was out of control. And so we really thought that, I think, for a little while, that there were records that were completely damaged. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. We found records later on in a different area that were salvaged from the original 1860 building, which was really good news. What I'd like to do at this point is talk a little bit about the future or even the present use of this space. So Brian, can you share that with us?
Sure. So this is currently the city clerk's office. There are challenges with this building. Obviously, the original footprint and being the original footprint in terms of how it was laid out was never intended to be City Hall per se. So we're dealing with the layout as we have as we have it to work with. For instance, there's a column right in the middle of the city clerk's office. It's not decorative, it's structural. So those are the kind of things that we have to work around. We did add, in the period of COVID, as you can see, the glassed area in front of the clerk's office. But there is still some remnants from the original construction. The first door on the left that you can see in the background is actually the old vault, and the city clerk's office still uses that to store vital records. It's fireproof, so that's helpful. And then through the second door, which is on the right, there's a lower section. All of the materials that the city clerks use, like license plates and registration forms and so forth, are also stored in that area, and that is an old section as well that's also was constructed to be fireproof. This particular area has been worked on a couple of times. As Renee mentioned, there was a water leak that damaged a considerable amount of this, so repainting, putting up new ceiling tiles and so forth. But there was also a number of leaks in the floor area. The original heating system for this building was steam, and the steam pipes were underneath the floor, and they went to this back wall here at the street where there were radiators. So when the new system was put in place, the old pipes were abandoned, but we had to find ways to run all of the new duct work to get a heating system in the building. So you can see there's a drop ceiling on the other side of that beam, and most of the areas within City Hall, for instance the hallways, the ceilings are 11 or 12 feet tall. We've unfortunately had to use that area to be able to run cables for computer systems and for the heating and ventilation system, just because there's no other way to get it in an old building of this nature. So a little bit of history on this room.
Okay. So the first picture you're seeing is the plaster ceiling that got wet from the water damage from the water heater, and that's all the lath and the wire work from above came crashing down into the city clerk's office where we're standing right now. The next picture references the underground piping for the return for the steam heating that Brian was talking about. You can see how rusted out that piece was, and when we were doing the work for the water damage, that's when it was discovered soon after that the piping was damaged and that we would not have heat in the building, so we had to quickly turn around and come up with another plan. The next picture is as we took the ceiling down, we recognized that there was a clock with a marble face that was buried, and we did restore it, we did get it running, but I can see today it is not running, but this is when we first discovered it, this picture, and that's also the paint that's there is what we used as a guide for the historical paint. The next picture shows the outline of the safe that was referenced. That is likely not the original safe that was in the building, but that was a safe that was put in when the bank went into this section of the building. And the last picture is a marquee that was outside of the entrance of the city clerk's office that had to be taken down for safety reasons, but it was there when it was a bank, I think, and removed probably in the late, I think, probably like in 98, 99, I think, is when it came down. So we're outside right now looking at the City Hall building from a pedestrian's point of view. And these were originally designed, some of them as storefronts. And so the first one, right now, today we use it as a rehearsal space for City Theater. Though there's a little door to the right that actually has a staircase that goes right upstairs to City Theater. In the past, I'm really not sure what this building was, but at one time it was uniformity.
Yes.
And what else do you think it might have been?
Landry's clothing store, and you had children's shop, Curtis's music, not
was it newspapers and magazines?
Yeah, Curtis Newspapers was over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had children's shop, City Theater entrance used to be a barber shop in there, along with the entrance to the City Theater itself. And then you had Warren's Furniture up in that area.
Right, so the
that
other
has nothing to do with City
stores.
Hall.
Right.
That's not part of
Yep.
the building. But this part here down here is all tied in with the City Theater.
Right, and they did some work on the restoration, probably back in, I think, late
early
80s,
90s.
yeah, and then
early
they did
90s.
some more work. Looks like it still needs it. It never stops. For today, it used to be Langevin clothing store.
Yep. Currently, this section is the codes office. It goes all the way through, it butts up right against City Theater, and then in the alcove between the two buildings, there's an entranceway where they can exit the backside and actually enter City Hall at ground level.
And there was a time when my husband opened a computer store here
right.
before, you know, giving us a chance to bring some technology to the downtown. But then the codes office came in, and it made it very convenient for people to come in, so they would have to go through the whole building. Then the Heart of Biddeford is next, and what was that in its day? I can't remember. I think
That was Curtis.
it was Curtis.
That was Curtis, was right there.
Yep. And then there was Ken Cody had a photography studio at one time there too, and Midtown Music was there too.
Yeah, there was also a little restaurant in there. Had some ice cream and so forth, and bagels and so forth.
Yes, at one time, you're right.
Yep.
Yeah, that was probably in the mid-80s.
I don't
Yep.
remember the name, but
Yep.
they
And,
had some good bagels down there.
That's
I used to cheat down from work.
and Tom, where was Murphy's Music Store? Do we know which one
up
it
in
was?
this area.
I'm not sure which one. It was one of these.
One of
It was
these.
small, but that's where you would go in and you could take a 45
Yeah.
and go to the back of the store and listen to it. They had listening booths. You see that in some old movies sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a neat store.
Oh, that's really neat.
Yeah, I think he was located right in that section right there.
Well, thank you. And this storefront used to be the children's shop, where a lot of people remember coming here to buy presents for people who had their babies or their clothes for your kids, sometimes the school uniforms. And Paul, I think there was a special customer that used to come here.
Yeah, President George H.W. Bush and his wife used to come down here and always buy their clothes for their grandchildren. And you had the Secret Service running around there checking everything out, and they frequently paid visits here very often.
And Brian, what's used here now?
This is currently the finance office, and it runs all the way back again to the alcove between the two buildings. So as part of the City Hall renovation that's underway right now, we're replacing all of the windows in City Hall. These particular windows on the outside are proving to be a little bit of a challenge because they actually have curved glass. We found only one company, it's located in Pennsylvania, that's actually making those for us as part of the renovation.
So according to the plans that John Calvin Stevens created, this was one of the main entrances to the City Hall. There was a door here, and you can see that is wood up above that's very ornately carved with some plaster. And above that is a little balcony, and then we're going to see the stained glass windows that are on top of that.
When I first got hired back in 1973, this used to be the police station down here. The chief's office was on the main floor. The detective's office was in the second floor. So everybody, and there's a stairwell. I believe the stairwell's still there, right?
Yeah.
Come down. So they come down here, lock them up in the back room. They walk up the back stairs and get to the chief's office. And finally, they took over Central Theater, and they moved the whole police department over to the old Central Theater. I don't remember what year that was, but it was probably 73, late 70s, early 80s when they moved them all.
As I mentioned earlier, all the windows in City Hall are being replaced as part of the current renovation. If the public wants to stop by, this is actually a test window that was installed to show what the new windows are going to look like. And you can compare that to the windows up above. These are historical, the molding and the
the frame size is what they were intended to try to match up.
So as Brian talked about earlier, when we were not able to utilize the existing steam heating system, there was a huge furnace that is located back here in a boiler room down below that has since been abated. But we had to bring in natural gas in order to heat the building. So the ginormous furnace is kind of replaced by, this is where the natural gas comes into, and then the furnaces are actually wall-hung boilers that you may be able to see a little bit later, but the footprint was so tiny as compared to the size of the boiler in that boiler room was probably the size of a giant truck. It was just huge. We're now at the back entrance of City Hall. What's interesting, this was not always an entrance. This was a solid wall, and below were the windows for some of the jail. And if you kind of come down this way, this is a little area down below where this is where the entrance was for the boiler room, but also there was a door where they would let the prisoners out and get some fresh air. Later on, this catwalk was added. They added that tower you can see over there for offices for City Theater, and some of the original holes where the windows were from the original building that was built in 1860, and again they built up above it. Well, swiping in to get in is quite different. Paul, do you remember having all the keys?
Yeah, it took me half an hour to get into the building. If there was an emergency, you couldn't get into the building.
So we used to call Paul Schneider because he had all the keys, and that was a character that was the superintendent of an apartment building.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Something happened that night, call Paul. He's got the key to get in.
He's got the key to get in. So now we're in the, what most people would say would be like the back entrance to City Hall, but if you're staff, this is probably the way that you enter to come in. At one time, again, there was no door there, and we would be standing right now, which was considered the municipal courtroom. And they had a city marshal, they had judges' chambers, and as Paul talked about with the police department, there was a stairwell that actually came up the back side of the room that's beyond that door. So it would be a place where if they were bringing the prisoners upstairs to the court, to the dock room, that's the way that they would come in. And also, I think in this area, I was looking at this, they had a board of aldermen, that's where they would meet. The school department was slated for this area, but I think they ended up moving it. They had a common council, and then later we will see that there was the mayor and the city clerk's office was here, as well as the tax collector and the assessor. Paul, what was here when you were here?
The accounting department was in here where they controlled the payroll, the taxes, tax liens and so forth. People would come in here to pay their bills. Okay, and then from that point on, this was all in one room at one time. Across the hall, if you look back on your left here, there used to be the police department used that office for a short time, but then it became the computer room back in 1973, and we stayed in that. The computer room stayed in there till almost 2000 until I moved upstairs.
And Brian, what do they use these spaces for today?
Well, again, we're trying to use every square inch of the building just because of the layout, use it as functionally as possible. So just as you come in on the left-hand side, the right where you're facing is an extension of the HR office. We have our GIS office is here with the GIS coordinator, and then this whole section right now is used for general assistance, where they do interviews and also process the general assistance applications.
And the general assistants used to be on the ground floor, I think back when with Vicki Edgerly, I think did she work up here?
Around the corner, I'll show you later.
Yep, that would be great, thank you. So walking through the hallway, for many years, people kind of just walked right through these because they were covered with years and years of dirt and they were not really functional. And they were always, well, what is this? What's going on here? Well, at one time, right below us are where the jail cells were. We're not really sure if they provided any illumination down below, but you can actually lift this piece out, and they have since electrified to create some light, and it's kind of like a night light, but I believe it's not really clear if these were electrified or if they just provided light to the cells below, like a skylight.
You're now standing in the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center Hall of Fame wall, which started approximately 4 or 5 years ago, and it's preserved. It's run by the Biddeford Cultural. We ask for volunteers of people who have served the city voluntarily in many different ways. With the permission of the city hall, we were able to display the recipients, and every year we pick 5 or 6 recipients based on how many people are nominated, I should say, and we put them up on the wall, and we recycle these every year. We take out the oldest one, for want of better words, and put up the new 5 or 6 nominees that we get every year. And this will be coming up. We'll be starting our 6th year somewhere in May, I believe, and we have the celebration here at City Hall, and, along with the mayor serving as MC and so forth. So it's been very prosperous. It's surprising what we find with volunteers in the city, that we don't even realize how much time that certain people volunteer. So it's been a good challenge. It's a lot of fun, and it's very interesting to find out who was really volunteering very well in the city.
So we're currently in the reception area for the city manager's office, and as we're talking about the history of the building and sort of living with the space, here's one of the vaults that was part of the renovated construction when the bank was here, and we currently, it's still used. We currently use this as a storage area for materials and so forth. So you can see the original vault is still right here, still in great working shape. They don't make them like they used to.
No way.
And there was another vault behind this one, and because these were the areas for the tax assessor's office originally, and the tax collector. So I guess that's where they put all our tax money, all went right into these vaults. So you never know what you're gonna find as you open doors. We are heading into the mayor's office, and here's what we have greeting us. It's a very old cash register. Today most people see basically an iPad as a cash register, but this is what cash registers look like back in the day. And it appears it came from Nichols and Company, which was a department store across the street. It's where Woven is right now, and next to what was Days, I think it was Days Jewelry.
Days Jewelry.
Yep. But this gives you an idea of old school mechanics. No, it looks like they might have had some wiring, so they were able to electrify it, but no one was going to easily be taking this out of the building, so they didn't have to worry about that. As part of this area, this is all boarded up right now, and there was something very special here just a couple weeks ago that I think some really wonderful work is happening. Brian, can you share what's happening? These were windows, right?
Yep, these were actually stained glass windows, and they're being removed and replicated as part of the new renovation that's occurring.
So the windows that were here are sister windows to the ones on the landing at City Theater that we uncovered And those were in pretty good shape because they had been covered up for so many years, so it sort of protected them, but these needed a lot more work. But at one time, this area had the city clerk's office here, and just beyond the wall on the other side was the public could come up to a desk. It was kind of like a counter where you'd get your marriage license or fishing license, and that was all done here on the main floor. So we're now in a very important office. This is the mayor's office. And the mayor's office, which is really interesting, has always been the mayor's office. Looking at the floor plans, looking at what was here before, it has always been the mayor's office. But it has gone through a lot of changes. And so what you see here is it brought back to as close to the original layout as we possibly could go. And we were able to do that. Unfortunately, though, it came because of the water damage that was done. This office was affected. And as Paul talked about earlier, back in the 70s, they put drop-in ceilings everywhere throughout the building. And so this had a drop-in ceiling. It had, even prior to that, I think they had in this, there was originally plaster, but what they used to do back in the old days, the plaster would fail, so they put a tin ceiling on top of it to help preserve, instead of having to do the plaster ceiling. So I believe there was a tin ceiling here and also where the city clerk's office was. But because of the water damage, that all was pulled down and destroyed. And so what we did is we went back to as close to the original as possible. And that's where we brought in Mike Labby once again to help us out. And he put in and replicated all the wainscoting that you see here. And as Brian described earlier, the curved windows, well, the building curves. So to make all the cuts and to get everything to kind of curve along was very, very difficult. And Mike did a great job. The other part of this are the transoms up above. Those were hidden with the drop ceiling. So being able to take the drop ceilings out really lightened up this space. And in my thought, it makes it more grand. When we were looking at the original colors, I had Tony Castro, who is the same person who did the work for the paint and plaster at City Theater, analyze the paint colors. And this is the original color, and it looks a lot like what you see at City Theater. And then he was able, he said, Renee, I think they're stencils. So we got up on scaffolding, and we had a light, and we were scraping away, and we found the wreaths. And so he replicated them. They were very, very subtle. The only thing I will say is I think the blue bow probably was not original, but we weren't sure how it was connected. So Tony, based on what he knew for the time period, made that artistic decision to put the bow. And there's a little controversy behind that because I think it's the idea that it's a bow or a ribbon for a mayor's office. I think it shouldn't matter. But it was a little controversial when we first were putting that together. The other side of this too is looking at the view that the mayor has outside and looking at the Main Street and the community and Lincoln Mill, and to stand here and think about all the mayors that came before our mayor today had this view, because a lot of these buildings have not changed over the years.
This is also one of the, I think it is the only room currently in City Hall that shows the windows with the transoms. All the other ones are covered up with drop ceilings. From the outside of the building, you can still see them, and those will be replaced as part of the renovation. But from inside the building, this is the only one that shows full height of the ceilings that are in all of the offices, but they're just covered up by those drop ceilings. Another interesting thing for this particular area, when we had the water leak, we're up above, so this room was damaged, and a lot of this had to be replaced as part of that work. We also have to, you have to go through health and safety inspection work before you can start that. And one of the things we ran into was all the plaster had a bunch of fibers in it. So there was a real concern that it was all asbestos. And once we started the work, we'd have to get into this big renovation of asbestos-containing material. What it turned out was this is original plaster that was horsehair plaster. They actually take plaster, mixed horsehair with it so that it would bind it together more, and that was put over the lath work that was on the walls. So just an interesting tidbit for City Hall. If you poke most of the walls that haven't been renovated, it is still lath with horsehair plaster over them.
And this lighting fixture is matches the ones that are down in the city clerk's office. Again, from the correct period, these would have been, these are electric, and we did have gas electric features throughout this building, and we were one of the first, I think, electrified municipalities. These sconces are absolutely original, except for obviously the light bulbs. But these were seen throughout the building, and we found them in various places. So we had these two refurbished to go back to the original patina, and which is really quite pretty. This wall, I believe, I'm not sure if this is plaster. I think there was one of the walls that we had to take down and replace with sheetrock because there was so much water damage associated with it. But Brian is absolutely correct. One of the challenges with plaster, though, it's hard to hang things with it. So back in the day, there may have been molding that they would put up, and then they would hang wires from the molding and then hang a painting or a photograph on that. I did see examples of that in some of the areas in the past, but we did not see that example in this room. So the photograph that you see is we had to peel back all the plaster that was on the wall, and it was right down to the brick, and that was because of the water damage that occurred. There was insulation, there were all kinds of things that got wet and would have caused issues with mold. And you can see today, that is how it was restored and with the transom up above. If you ever have a chance to come up to the second floor and attend one of the council meetings or one of the community meetings, you'll see all these pictures of former mayors. And at one time, the pictures of each mayor, they were probably like an 8 by 10, and they were glass framed, and they basically lined all the walls all the way around the hallway. And then later on, it was getting to a point where what are we going to do with all of these? And then they had some renovations, so all those pictures got taken down and they were put into storage. And then the photos of the mayors, of course, continue. And what we have to give credit to are, there were a group of people that worked really hard to find a way to honor all the mayor's pictures, but do it in an opportunity to kind of condense and save space. And I think this was a really great way to provide that tribute so that we can go back and look at all the people who served our community. And some served for one term, and some served for many, 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 many terms. And it's really interesting to see the changes over the decades. So now we're in the council chambers. So this was called, at one time they used the word alderman as a reference to the council. And actually, structurally, it hasn't changed very much. What I can say is there was a renovation that was done with the wallpaper, carpeting, and the addition of chairs. And the addition of chairs was really, I would say, a very welcomed one, because What we have right here is a bench, and for many years, at least the years that I remember, is there were benches like this, and we all said that it was the council's way of having you not stay at the meeting too long, and it would move people along. And they were heavily painted. There were probably 10 coats of paint on the benches, and then many of the benches left the building in a more recent attempt to do a renovation versus a restoration. But what they did do is they basically stripped off all the paint and brought the wood back to its original. So it's nice that they kept this little token of what it was like here before. At the top, I think there may have been some type of light fixture or chandelier that hung from that. It's very similar to the one that was at City Theater. And above this is an attic space that has some of the duct and vent work. These light fixtures are, I think, I'm not sure of the age of them. I can't remember if it's something new made to look old. I don't have enough information about those. And I know that now where the light fixture was in the middle is at one time, and I think it still is the supply for the air conditioning. Is that
Correct.
The case? And at one time probably had like a fresh air exchange, that's what they used to do in these old buildings. But the windows, we're really happy to hear that those are being changed, because sometimes people would try to open the windows and the existing ones have come down like a guillotine. I think someone actually got injured because of it. So we're very happy to hear that work is being done. But this is where all the important decisions have been made for many, 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 many years and years to come. Paul, I'd like you to step in for a moment, and do you have any memories of the council, like for technology, because you started off, like right now what you see here, Brian's going to talk a little bit more about, tell us when you have to go back. So give us an idea of what things were like when you first brought technology or microphones, that kind of thing here.
It wasn't any when I first started here, and then I believe it was under the Mayor Gratello decided to get involved with the technology and so forth and so on. They wanted to get the meetings to be shown on TV and so forth. And then we had a bet going that we weren't able to get the sound system in time for the meeting and so forth and so on. So I said, yeah, well, I says, I'm gonna beat you to it. So he says, okay. I said, so the meeting was at 6:30, 5 o'clock, I had all the power set up, the communication was running and so forth. So I won my bet with Mayor Gratello, but it's grown a lot since then. As you can see, the screens on a wall and so forth and so on. It was a challenge, and we redid the whole room here, like you were talking about, decorating and so forth. It's not what it used to be, believe me. So it's come a long way, and matter of fact, I think it's still the same drapes I put in here many years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right, and this carpet's held up too remarkably well. But
original.
I think this was done probably in the 90s.
Yes,
is that right?
early 90s.
Yeah. Added, a lot of that came about because of COVID, I assume, and the technology for people to be able to view the meetings from home. I know that we have some larger screens now. There used to be another one over there.
Yep, the public access has been broadcasting council meetings for just over 20 years. During COVID, there was a switch to include Zoom so that people could view those remotely, and the meetings could be held remotely. That has continued, and we just this past fall completed an upgrade of the audio video system in here that allows not only the people that are home on Zoom, but also live streaming to the website and public access to watch a number of meetings that are held here in the chambers.
So we just got off the elevator and we're now on the 3rd floor. And as I got off the elevator, I looked around and I said, some things just don't change, because some of the things that were here when I used to do a lot of the work in the building have remained. But it makes sense because not a lot of people use this space. But the good news is, like, this behind this door here is where they used to, Paul, I think they had records that they kept that were all paper records, right?
Paper records, a lot of
Yeah.
stuff came from the city clerk's office and the tax office, and they had to keep them for so many years.
Before they got rid of them.
Excise tax and stuff like that was all stored up here.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess when we open the door, you know, that doesn't exist anymore, so.
No, it's all gone.
It's all gone now.
Yeah, yeah. You're right, things don't change.
So it looks like things don't change, and there are some items that have not been gone through yet. And again, people have to keep them for so many years, but I have to say, this is one of my favorite rooms in the building. It is a time capsule. There are pieces in here that have not been touched. The floor is really rickety. It is, I think, a testament to having a little bit of history preserved. So what we spoke about earlier about records being preserved, what ended up happening is at some point in time, a lot of the ledgers and some of the books that were thought to be lost really were preserved. They were in another room. They were in a room that was up in a stairwell. It was like a storage area. And that storage area needed to be cleaned out because that was going to be the home of the new boiler room, because they were wall-hung boilers. So we had to take the bundles and so many of these volumes of books, and they had to be stored somewhere. So they were temporarily stored at the Saco Museum and the Dyer Library. They took really good care of them until they were able to be returned back to the city. So there were ledgers that we found from the 1860s. And they had thought at one time they had been destroyed, but they fortunately made it through. And likely it was because they were in the vaults that were downstairs at the time and were not damaged. So we still have them today. Obviously, there needs to be a little work to kind of get them organized, but we know at least where they are and they're being preserved. So now we're on the third floor, and this is the city engineer's offices. And this is where all the blueprints are stored. And this has always been the city engineer's space. But what also used to be here was they actually had an area where they had a band space for the Pinchot band. And it was like a military room is kind of what they would refer to it as, but it was actually used for rehearsal space. And I think they even had a small, in the drawings, just a small little tiny stage. But it was well used for many years. The drop ceilings, I am going to guess above this, the ceilings will go much higher. And there was a skylight. I think if we were to remove this, there was a section with a skylight, and I think they even had a little kitchen up here at one time that was in the drawing.
So the engineering office has gone through some changes to try to keep up with the times, as we just saw in what we call the archive. There are a number of records that are in paper form. Engineering over the past several years has done made a considerable effort to digitize most of the plans that they have. So now almost everything is online and electronically filed. Although we still retain the original copies, we now have electronic copies of all of the historical files that were in the engineering office, which has helped considerably and will obviously preserve them. So we're now on the roof of City Hall. You can see the clock tower behind us, and most citizens don't get a chance to see the view from up here. You can see most of the mills, see down a portion of the bay, over at the police station.
So this is a good vantage point to see the damage that has been done over the years with the weather and everything else. And the goal is to hopefully bring this back to its original splendor. In the original, it was painted red, and the frieze work was a brick red color. You can even see it peeking through. So when the clock tower was first built, it was all done by weights. It was mechanical. And then later on, I think it was about in the 60s, they moved to electronic motors to move the hands of the clock and then also to activate the bell. Interestingly, the bell was made by a company that the original founder was the apprentice for Paul Revere. So it does have some significance. And I'm going to have Brian tell us a little bit about, I'm just so overwhelmed right now because I have not seen the more recent restoration work that was done on this clock. I remember it. You could barely tell it was green. It was really beat up, and just to see it shine and look pretty much the way it did when it was installed. So please share the good work that was done.
Yeah, this is a great renovation that occurred. You can see this some additions. We've got now we've got mechanical engines in here. But the system itself is all original. It was removed, renovated, and then restored, and replaced back in here. And it's really just a great testament to some of these old buildings. And just for scale, if you're outside and you see the clock faces, you can see the clock faces here. This is just a few feet below where those clock faces are from the outside.
Used to go. Yes, the little window used to go up.
So there's, what you saw was the electrified version of the workings, but back when it was weighted and done mechanically, these giant shafts held the weights. And there would have to be someone that would come in and operate that, and it was a lot of work. And I've had people talk to me in the community and saying, oh, my uncle or my grandfather was the one that used to go up and do all of that. What's quite spectacular is this pendulum. I have not seen it ever work. Paul was saying the same thing. The mechanism was up above, but not the pendulum. So coming up here and seeing this is pretty fabulous. So this is the stairwell that leads to the rooftop that we were just at and the clock tower. And in the hallway, the nice thing about these little hallways that are not used very often, not a lot happens. So we have these little treasures from the past. I'm not sure that this is original, but it's definitely very early. I would say probably it's possible like the 1920s, because it has a little bit of a deco feel to this, this design. And this is rag rolling technique, which became popular again in the 90s. But again, back at the turn of the century, like in the early 1900s, it was a way, instead of wallpaper, to decorate these areas. Also, you'll see that we have this wood up here. So the rails obviously are not to code and are not safe. People were a lot shorter back then. And today we have, these are just here to make it safe for people to pass through. And we have daylight coming in, and we see this beautiful, long, tall window. And what's the plan for windows like this?
Yeah, these windows are also part of the renovation project, and they will be replaced to be historically accurate.
And one of the things to remember is we talked about water damage. Not all water damage came from the water heater, because the clock tower had been left in such great disrepair for many years. Water was getting into the brickwork. The pointing of the brick was failing, and so there was a lot of water that came through from different storms. This was, we pretty much lost the ceiling at one time, and it has since been shored up and repaired. There was work done on the tower, not cosmetic, but just to hold things in place until a better opportunity would come, and that is coming. So that's very exciting. Brian, can you just share real quick about what the plans are for the clock tower and the restoration?
Yep, as part of this renovation, I mentioned earlier that all the windows are going to be replaced. We're also putting sprinklers in the entire building, so the building will be protected from fire hazard, obviously. And also the clock tower will be renovated as part of that. So that's been a long time coming. It'll be great to have that done.